I also want to thank First Student and all of their bus drivers for coming early to warm up the buses and make sure everyone got to school safely last week during the bitterly cold weather. Our nutrition and wellness department continues to work with local farmers to increase the amount of food we purchase locally for school meals. We have purchased 25 tons of local fruits and vegetables so far this school year. I want to thank all the staff and students who assisted with last Thursday One Dream MLK celebration. It was an inspiring evening. Congratulations to all the MLK nominees and the award recipients. Lawrence Schools Foundation hosted a successful ovation yesterday evening. It's a district-wide talent show at the Lee Center featuring our middle and high school students. And congratulations to Lawrence Virtual Senior Barry Zing, winner of the West Central Division of the Music Teachers National Association Senior Piano Competition, and to West Middle School's Future City teams, winner of the Regional Future City Championship at KU over this past weekend. Just a reminder to board members, the board lunch is at Prairie Park tomorrow at 11 a.m. And I also want to say welcome back, Janice.
Thank you, Dr. Stubblefield. Okay, our next item is patron commentary, and this evening we have Brad Allen from the Lawrence Public Library and staff members to share with us a very cool program that they do.
Hi, my name is Brad Allen. I'm the Executive Director of Lawrence Public Library. Thanks for having me. I want to introduce my colleagues here. Heather Kearns is our marketing coordinator, and you might have seen Kristen out front handing out books to you as you came in. Kristen is our events librarian. And if you didn't get a copy of the book and you're interested in getting a copy, I think we caught most anybody who is interested is on your way in, but we'll have a couple copies and it'll stick around for a couple minutes after just brief remarks. For just some background, Read Across Lawrence is an annual community-wide reading program that we've been doing since 2002. I think we've taken 1 year off during that tenure. This year, Read Across Lawrence is from February 10th to March 17th. And we are very excited about this year's pick, Wonder by R.J. Palacio. It's the story told from perspectives of several characters that converge in a portrait of a community struggle with empathy, compassion, and acceptance. There are brochures in your books that list all of the events we have surrounding the book. You'll also find in your book a kind community log, and so you can log your acts of kindness as we strive to make Lawrence a certified kind community. Our signature event that I want to point out to you will take place at the Lead Center on March 11th at 3:30 p.m., where anti-bullying activist Lizzie Velasquez will talk about her experience with online bullying when she was voted World's Ugliest Woman in 2007 on a YouTube video. If you're not familiar with Lizzie Velasquez, she's done TED Talks and really told about her story. She's it's a facial deformity from aging. I don't know the exact. So you've probably seen her online, but we're really excited to have her. She's a really powerful speaker, and so we really hope to get a packed house for that. We would not be able to do this without our partners, which are the Friends of the Library and Library Foundation, KU Libraries, the Lawrence School District, and BNSF Foundation for making all of this fabulous programming possible. And thanks for your time here today. And enjoy the book. This is the first time we've done one book for all ages. We've never really done this before. The program originally started out intended for adults, because the idea is that adults don't read and kids are supposed to be reading in school. And we slowly started to move it out to where we had for teens and kids. And this is the first year we've done something quite like this. So we're really excited to get some adults to read a book that's geared more toward kids. We feel like it has a wide audience for all ages. So we hope you participate. We hope to see you out at programs. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's a wonderful program that our library does every year. It's amazing. Okay, our next item on the agenda is board commentary. Board members have things to share. Anyone?
I have things to share.
All right, Rick, you're up.
So, as you know, the community was surveyed, and both in terms of the phone survey and the online survey, We got the results of that survey last board meeting, and one of the pieces of that was related to school start times. And I thought this might be a good time to revisit why this is an important issue. So I have handouts for folks if they want to pass that down. And what I wanted to do is basically just summarize what the science says. And I fully understand that not everybody believes in science, but if you do, this is what the research says. So moving starting times, and I'm talking about high school now, back is associated with improved academic performance, improved graduation rates, reduced numbers of tardies, reduced absenteeism, reduced risk of automobile accidents, less caffeine consumption, better decision making, so less risky behavior, less likelihood of experiencing depression, and actually, interestingly enough, fewer sports injuries. And in terms of the science, on the back, I have a number of references that this comes from. There are hundreds of studies out there, but I wanted to fit them on one page. So these are a few that I thought were particularly important. So there's some other things here that, if anybody wants to see a copy, I have some extras. But there's a chart that was produced by the University of Minnesota and the Minneapolis school districts, which have really been a leader on this issue. And it actually is a study of over 7,000 students that shows the academic performance in 10th and 11th and 12th grade, comparing schools that start at 8:30 or after, which is the recommendation of the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Medical Association. And they outperform those even who start at 8 or 8:15 or 7:30 or 7:30 or earlier than 7:30. So I thought that was just kind of a nice way to sum up what this research looks like. There's also a quote, and the reference for this quote is on the back page if you want to check it out. And they were looking at a variety of factors, but one of the things they looked at was economically disadvantaged kids. And the quote is, "We found evidence that economically disadvantaged minority and low-performing students may benefit from later school start times. Relative to their equally disadvantaged peers, disadvantaged students attending schools with later start times had fewer absences, higher course grades, and higher Algebra 1 test scores. Additionally, we found that minority students are less likely to be suspended and that low-performing students earn higher ACT scores in high schools that start later. These subgroups results suggest promise in narrowing gaps in school engagement and student achievement." There's one other quote here. This is from Kenneth Dragseth, who's the retired superintendent for the Edina Public Schools, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. And his quote was, "Starting school later was the most significant and beneficial decision I made in all my years I was in education." So I just wanted to kind of refocus us on this because I think it's easy to lose track. We've been talking about this since August of 2015, and I think it's easy to lose track. One other comment I wanted to make, and then I have another handout. If you have high school kids, ask your kids if they've ever seen kids sleeping in class. And my sense is that based on the few that I've asked, the modal response is all the time. So, this is not a panacea. This is not going to, get rid of that entirely. But I think this is a piece in closing the achievement gaps. I think it's a piece in terms of helping academic performance. So, just one other. So I actually put together the results of the community survey in terms of making these changes. So we had a telephone and online survey, and if you look at the total number, it's 1,268 people. We gave them 4 options. 2 of those options basically say, don't make a change. So it's like, things are fine as they are, or it's not perfect, but, it's, too much of a hassle to make a change. And so, you combine those two together. So the two no options comes out to 22%. The percentage who said make change a priority, that was the other category, 43%. So almost double the individuals who would like to make this a priority. Now, there was another option, and that option was to continue to explore this. And when you combine those, it's 22% and about 77%. I think those are powerful numbers. I think the community is telling us something. And then I put the down here the numbers that this comes from, and I have the original survey if people want to look at this. I think it's time that we move forward on this. I realize that yes, this is not in our goals, but changing the name of South is not in our goals. Adopting Tiny K is not in our goals, but we're going to do that. This is something we've been exploring in one form or fashion for a long time, and given the science, given the community support for this, and by the way, the community was supportive without any PR on our part, anything to do to promote the benefits. I think this is actually a time that we should move forward on this.
Thank you, Rick. I'll share with the board that board officers and superintendent talked about the survey results as relates to this item, and we will be coming to the board with a report to discuss next steps, to consider how to respond and how to move forward, most likely at our second February meeting, right? So we will have an opportunity to dig into this further at that point in time. So other board members have commentary to share?
I'll just say that along those lines, I, as somebody that looks at mental health research quite a bit, I have seen a lot of data as it relates to emotional well-being and the connection to soft skill development, which we're working on as a district, and its relationship to correlations around start times with school. So just kind of, also, as a board member, I'm also interested in hearing more about how we could look at that in this district. Okay, thank you.
If I could just ask a question. Last year, I asked Kyle, I said, if we were going to implement this, what would be kind of the last date we could do that? And it's probably not fair to put you on the spot, but what he said was, if you made the decision before spring break, does that seem like enough time? What's, and I realize that this is just your best guess estimate, so
So I did visit with Wayne Zachary last week, and I think if you just look at the technical things, not all of it, one of the things that would happen would have to be the additional purchase of buses. So I don't know, like, timeline, if they've already ordered those, or if that would be like one of the determining factors. And then I haven't spent a lot of time with like high school scheduling and how it would impact some other things. So I can figure it out. I mean, if he said by spring break, but there are just a lot of other layers, but if they can't get the buses, then it wouldn't be possible. And yeah, so that would be the first question. If they haven't already ordered whatever buses, they would have to order additional buses because of the route components.
I would add, and I don't know how, just a timeline. I think there's just a lot of communication that we need to do to, whether it's decided or not, or if it is decided on, communication and input from the community, because I think anytime you mess with family schedules without their input, it's really not fair. And I know we did this years and years ago with early release, and the community felt like, wait, nobody even asked our input. So I think we really, and I know the survey, is an indication, but it is 10% of, our, well, I don't know if that's correct, 1,200 people out of our 10,000 students or whatever the number is. But But I think we need to visit with site councils, we need to visit with PTOs and make sure people know about it in advance to actually have input, because I think it's just really important to get that balance.
So, and I would just say, first of all, thank you for putting this together, because I think it's really nice to kind of see it all in a one-pager like this and have resources to go check out, so I appreciate that. When we were meeting with Anna for agenda setting, the reason why we kind of didn't have it on the list today was because staff needed the additional time to put together a comprehensive timeline for how something like this could be rolled out. I don't think anybody's against this idea of pursuing this and figuring out how we can do it well. What we don't want to do is rush through it, because we, kind of decided right before spring break we have to make it happen before the fall. So we've got high school possible schedule changes that are coming up. So I think all of this has to kind of work together. And so we really need the staff to evaluate how that's all going to look and the best ways to move forward. But I don't think you're getting resistance. I just think we want to do it as smart as we can, so that we're not pushing anything and then ending up having to kind of go back and change things and cleaning up messes we created without thinking them through.
Well, no, and I completely agree. I have visited with the site councils for both the high schools, and so to kind of get that process started. I mean, and clearly we want to do this right. I think that it's in everybody's best interest to do that. The concern I've had is that we seem to have drug our feet. Again, we started talking about this in 2015, and so I don't want to. I don't want to see that process continue. I think if we move forward thoughtfully, if we talk to the right people, if we actually do something in terms of educating people, doing all the things that we should when making this kind of change, that's great. I just, it hasn't happened so far, and so I want to make sure that we don't delay this any longer than we need to, because this is, this is a good thing for kids. Every kid, every high school kid is going to benefit from this in terms of additional time for sleep. And there's a group of kids, particularly those who tend to be a little more disadvantaged, who are going to benefit in some of the other ways in terms of the academics and the tardies and the absenteeism. And so, obviously, I mean, I've been persuaded by the science for quite a while. And I think that if we drag our feet, we just do a real disservice to our kids.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. Do board members have any other board commentary they wanted to share on any other topics, any goings on? Okay, we'll move on then to our consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those that are considered routine and are adopted by one motion unless any board member or the superintendent requests that an item be removed. The item or items removed are voted on separately. Okay. Ready for a motion?
I move the Board of Education adopt the items listed on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Janice?
Fincher,
Yes.
Gordon Ross,
Yes.
Ingram,
Janice, yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Beeson.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0.
Okay, we'll move on to our next item of business, which are reports and approvals.
Excuse me. Can we get some tech support? Because my computer is it's spinning around doing the little circle.
Yes,
thing.
absolutely. We'll grab somebody to work on that.
Or I'll just take Melissa's.
Okay.
Hopefully that'll work.
Okay. Well, try it and see. We'll still have them come out and take a look at it. While we're working on that, I'll introduce our first report and approval tonight. It's on Tiny K with Kevin Harrell, Executive Director of Student Support Services and Special Education, and Laura Basham, Assistant Director of Special Education.
Good evening. Kevin Harrell, Executive Director of Student Services Special Education. Tonight, we want to follow up on our board presentation regarding Tiny K's request for LPS to become the lead agency for Tiny K, provide special ed services to students birth to 3 who qualify. Tonight, we want to revisit and have Tiny K kind of talk about why they made the request, also answer any specific questions. We did get some questions we want to make sure you get answers to. And the end of the board chooses to move forward. We want to let you know the process. That's one of the things. It's not just the board saying, okay, and it happens. There are some other things that happens from the state to allow any other questions.
Great. Rick, are you fixed up?
No.
Not yet.
Karma.
There you go.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Are you good?
It's all good.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin Smith-Bird. I was here at the last board meeting. I'm the president of the Tiny K Board, and I just wanted to provide some further clarification as regarding our request in merging the programs and having USD 497 become our lead and fiscal agent. I wanted just to share just some of the challenges as a board operating in isolation that we have faced and kind of why that has led us to this request. Basically, it comes down to, and I presented the reasons last week, and I won't revisit those, but just some very specific examples. Things like our accounting, our payroll, and our taxes. We don't have the in-house folks to do that. We contract that out to everyone, and that takes, money away from our service delivery. Employee benefits and insurances. Insurance is contracted with an outside entity as well. And then finally, really just ensuring that we have an administrator who has an educational license so that we can draw down categorical aid for that person, and someone who also, an administrator who knows special education and knows Part C. We have a lot of folks who, when we have looked for administrators in the past, don't necessarily know special ed or Part C, and so that's a challenge for us as a board. So those are kind of some of the reasons, not all of them, just in addition to what I presented to you last board meeting as to why we made that initial request. And is that good, Laura, where I'm at? So any other questions, we are here and we are happy to answer any other questions. Thanks.
And we will also make sure that there's a time for questions, answers, kind of at the end of all of our presentations as well. Next, we have Heather, who is the Tiny Care Part C coordinator for the state.
Hello. It's lovely to be here today. I want to start by saying I'm just really shocked that there hasn't been a giant fight over Douglas County wanting to take this program on, because to be able to have the opportunity to shape lives in that birth to 3 time frame is so amazing and such a beautiful thing. And I really think it's a great opportunity for the school district to build those relationships with families during that most critical time. The families that we typically see during those first 3 years that are needing our services, really, we really build a strong bond with those families just because of that time frame. And you're learning and growing with them. You're working in the home or the child's natural environment. I think it could be a really great way to start a relationship with a family and to set the tone for a child's educational experience. So I think it's an exciting opportunity. Like I said, I'm surprised nobody's fighting for this. Everybody in Lawrence doesn't want to, help support the Tiny K program. I will also say that the Tiny K program here in Douglas County does a great job. And so from a state perspective, I don't know if that helps alleviate some of your concerns, but it's a really solid program to be taking on. And so I think that speaks volume to the work that's already been done. I know there had been some questions about across the state, what other configurations, maybe who all was housed within a school district or other mechanisms. So it is interesting, Kansas loves their local control. So across the state we have 33 programs and they do look very differently. But I will say I think we've got about 12 that are housed in school districts. The rest of them, we have TARC in Kansas or in Topeka that is part of another organization. What I will say you don't see a lot is a standalone, which really does speak a lot to how Douglas County Tiny K has been able to achieve that, being kind of a medium-sized program, and to be able to stand alone like that. Because we just don't really have a lot of that because really there is a great benefit to being under a larger umbrella. If you have staff turnover, you can have that continuity of leadership that can help carry through. So I can see a lot of benefit into to the program to be able to be in the school district. As far as really tangible, I think, we touched base on last time about transition. I think there's lots of places to do that really great, whether they're housed in or not within a school district, but there are lots of really fantastic opportunities if the Tiny K program would be within the school district. It's that relationship building, it's that soft handoff that a staff person can do if they already have a really close relationship with the next party that the program or that the child's going to. Also, just that name affiliation and that level of trust. Those relationships are so strong a lot of the time in that first 3 years, and any transition, especially when children are young, can be scary for parents. And I think this would soften that because it's not really a transition then. You're still being, it's like a warm hug from the same place that you were getting it from the start. It would make it a more smooth transition, I would say. So I don't really want to rehash any of the other stuff, but I would be more than happy to answer any questions later or now.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I have not followed the federal budget proposals on this particular program closely because it hasn't been something that's been within our sphere, I guess. And obviously, budget proposals are budget proposals, and that's not usually what happens. But what is the discussion going on right now about the Grant Part C and about the Medicaid funding that goes to this program? Are there any concerns based on the proposals that are floating around?
So right now, the proposal is for flat funding for Part C.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of concerns with that.
That is,
although
they didn't zero it out or anything crazy like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Over a 5-year period, or is that sort of this year? What happened in the last 5 years? Where are we at in that in general?
So I think I've looked at trends, and I can look back if you guys want more specifics. I could easily find that information. But I don't think there's ever been a time where Part C from the federal level has taken a cut. I think it's been stable. Years back when they created the Part C program, they had promised even, more money than has ever really come to fruition. And so I think it's been a pretty stable climb to where we're at. Obviously, some additional federal funding would be lovely. But, and as far as Medicaid goes, those are interesting discussions that are being had right now. And so we'll kind of have to see how that goes. We do, I would say, the categorical aid in Kansas that programs pull definitely brings in more funding than the Medicaid. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the benefit, as well as the CIF money that currently comes from the state level. Okay. Before we were in the CIF funds, we were in the state budget, the general funds. Okay. So that also would never go away. That's not
as long as they don't decide to annuitize the CIF. Like that was the proposal last year, right?
It was.
And that's kind of gone away.
It has, and because of maintenance of effort with the federal government, when they had proposed to do that, they put us back into the state general fund. Okay. So Part C does, knock on wood, feel pretty protected.
Okay. Okay. For new board members, are you familiar with CIF, the children's? It's the Children's Initiative Fund. So that is the money that Kansas gets for the tobacco settlement, and they dedicated it to the CIF programs. And then last year there was discussion about they were going to annuitize that. It's basically sell off their settlement to try to fill a hole in the state budget, and that didn't go anywhere. But I know certainly there was a lot of advocacy on the part of those who've been involved with CIF and those programs to ensure that did not happen. So, okay.
How frequently does the grant have to be renewed?
It's an annual grant
It's
process.
an annual grant.
that
And
the
so
local
is there a grant writer on staff at Tiny K? Right there. You're here. I am. Okay.
Yeah, typically our coordinators do the grants, I would say, almost 100% of the time.
But it's not a grant writing type of situation. It's something just like we do for special education currently do. So it's something that we can do in-house through special education staff.
Yeah, it doesn't go through competitive bid or, we anticipate that the programs continue on. It's to everyone's
The other
benefit.
thing is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with maintenance of effort that she talked about, is part of that the federal government requires the state to maintain special education funding. So that's why if it moves from one fund to the other, the state has to fund it somehow, so they find a way. They may move it around, but they're required to fund at the same level from the federal government.
Other questions for Heather? Okay, thank you.
I was going to say I was ready to make a motion, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
As long as there are no other questions.
Before we get there,
Okay.
I think we maybe do have some other questions.
Okay.
So did you have more information you were planning to share? Okay.
We have just a little bit more.
Okay, go ahead.
Information.
Okay.
We did want to follow up on a couple of the questions that came out at the last meeting. Up on the screen, you will see the timeline and the expectation of the process that goes from Part C to Part B in the transition. That was here's a concrete example of.
Can you walk us through that, because we can't see it?
Yeah, unfortunately, our projector up here is not working.
It's not working, right? Okay.
Where we would normally be able to see the detail.
Tammy, do you want to kind of come up also and help with this too? And I will tell you, I'm not as versed on the Part C side yet. So, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So basically what this is a rundown of the transition. And before a child's third birthday, currently we are responsible for making sure that we have determined eligibility for a child and that we have an IEP in place if a child is eligible for special education services. Prior to that, Tiny K needs to filter information to us no less than 90 days prior to a child's third birthday. And you can see kind of the orange boxes. Those are the steps that Tiny K has to go through. Starting at birth, they go through, they identify if the child has a disability or a developmental delay. They do focus on family-centered advocacy, hooking up families with resources, making sure that they're really prepping the family to advocate for the services, and then also making sure that the child is getting the services that they need also. And then they write an individual FSP.
Individual IFSP.
IFSP. Go for it with that part. These orange boxes here. I'm not.
Yeah, would you please introduce yourself? Because you're on YouTube.
Looking at me, right? I'm Tammy Wallina. I work for Kansas In-Service Training System. Basically, I'm the technical assistance side for Part C. I've also been a provider, and I've directed a program, so some of this is just second nature to me. So I just kind of spit it out. But what they're talking about specifically here is transition, and transition from infant toddler to preschool is very thought out because the eligibility criteria is very different between the two programs. So they have to go through eligibility again when they turn 3. But it's a process of switching programs. So they take that very seriously at both the federal and the state level. So about 9 months to 90 days out, they start talking to families about all of the different steps of transition. So the first big step is a transition plan where they sit down with them and they talk with the family about all of the different options in the community, one of them being the school district. If a child has a developmental delay or disability still, the school district is something that has a lot of services to support them. So it's definitely an option that's discussed, and most families go with that. The next step is the transition conference. that's when the school district representative actually gets involved, and they meet with the family and again go through a whole discussion of all of the options in the community for the plan and what's best for the child. And then after that, the child's evaluated with the school district and they determine whether they're eligible. Then they write, and then by the child's 3rd birthday, they have to start services. There's a difference between an IEP and an IFSP in that in the IFSP, it's a family service plan, so they're focused on what is needed so that that family can support that child. So the outcomes look different, the services look different because you're supporting a whole family, where when they turn 3, you're looking at the school district, their education, the classroom, so it shifts. But the stronger bond those professionals have, the families who benefits from that.
Kelly.
Yeah, so when you transition from Part B to Part C, you go from in-home services to in-school services. So there's going to be a transition for families regardless of whether or not they are within District 497. This is a time where you can have a soft handoff either from the person that's been in your home to the school district. It's similar to if you're moving from one building to another building and there's transition. So I anticipate every time you have, particularly when you have people coming into your home, which is essentially my business. I'm a social worker. When you have people coming into your home, you have the ability to establish a relationship with them. There's always going to be a challenge when you move them into a new program, regardless of whether or not you have the same name or not. So what I'm wondering about, I guess, is I understand how the services, I hope I didn't cut you short in terms of what happens between B and C. What I'm wondering about when I think about how the district takes this on and how we can impact those families is how are we going to have a change on the outcomes? So there's not really anything that's been said that says there's going to be a difference in these services because services are mandated through Part B. You're delivering the same exact services regardless of whether we do it or someone else does it. So what I want to know is if we take this on as a district, I understand the administrative benefit. I completely get that. I know it's hard as a standalone nonprofit to do the administration work. You also lose a level of advocacy that you can do independently as an independent 501c3 that maybe a district is not going to do as well just because of the bureaucracy. Sometimes the strongest voices for kids are those ones that stand alone in smaller agencies. And so when families are saying, we love you, it's very hard to move to another district, they know that they have to go to the school district eventually. So what I'm not seeing here in terms of this plan, other than the fact that we become the lead financial agent, and that's good for administration for the agency. What I need to understand to approve this is how this is good for the families and how this is going to change outcomes for the kids. And that part I haven't quite heard. Some of the staff that you have are people that I know or that I know of your work, and I think you are phenomenal. So I know you do good work. I know why people love you. So what I'm trying to understand is if we make this move and the school takes on this responsibility, the district takes on this responsibility, is this good for the district? Because there are some risks that we incur. And really, how is this good for families? It's not translating for me, which is why I asked for specific family examples.
Absolutely, and we do have, Ryan is here. He's part of the Tiny K board as well that can speak. Part of our challenge is giving concrete examples without giving away confidentiality.
I appreciate that. So what I'm looking for is not exactly, I don't need someone to tell me their personal story. What I'm looking for is patterns. So what you do know is what people commonly see from your families, where the common struggles are, and what you presume you're going to fix if we take this on. So it's not that I need to know a story that might, illustrate to me or pull on my heartstring. Right. What I really want to know is these are the outcomes that we're going to see. This is the change we're going to see for kids if we take this on.
Okay. When I can talk in general about some of the things that we're hoping to see and that some of the challenges that we're facing now, in looking at the two programs working in isolation, bringing them together, kind of without being critical, just two programs working in isolation makes it difficult.
I frankly need you to be critical. I mean, to be honest, for me to feel comfortable, I need you to tell me really clearly what's not working.
Okay, so some of the things, and I'm going to go from the family experience, I can pull up some kind of data and mishaps and hiccups kind of in that respect, but what I'm hearing is you're wanting some family and some teaming examples. Some of the things kind of from my personal experience, I do, part of my position as the assistant director is I do sit on meetings. We do have IEP meetings. I sit in quite a few meetings for where students are transitioning into our students or our services when they're 3 years old. I often experience tension from families, from providers, from the Tiny K side that results in, or I think stems from a misunderstanding or a misperception of what our services are. Tensions or misperceptions of maybe my student may or may not qualify. I don't know if they'll qualify. I'm not quite sure what the criteria is for qualification or for eligibility. In my opinion, there's a lot of angst that for families, that not knowing, and that stems from just two programs, well-meaning, working in isolation, not necessarily working together. So in my opinion, we have quite a few families that are, quite a few might be in generalization, overgeneralization, but we do have families that are coming into our services and are feeling tension. And so as part of the school district, we're the big bad school district, and we are trying to undo that perception, and we're trying to rebuild our relationship. Like Heather said, like Tammy said, if we were one program or one staff, had a real good understanding, that I think really could be alleviated. So that's one example. I don't know. Shelley, or do you have another?
I think part of the conversations, I don't know that we can do it better than they do it. I do think we can do it as well and continue what they've done. Down the road, we may look at different things because as a district, when we look at mental health and when we look at socials, when we look at those things, as part of the district, we just kind of cover all areas. So if we, right now we do 3 to 21, we'll just look at it in the aspect of birth to 21. But that's just how we look at it. And that transition, just helping parents understand what they will be seeing as the student moves down the road. And even for example, for me, is knowing that my daughter, if when she was 2, this is what's happening. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what's going to happen. But part of that conversation can be, right now this is happening. As they became school age, what is happening, and then when they're in middle school, this is, and a better understanding of the system from birth to 21 as you look out to see what's best for you, what can happen with you.
If you keep the same staff and you deliver the same, we are saying we're going to hire the same staff, how is that? I mean, because some of them I think are very skilled at doing that. So how does that, I guess what I would like to see is, are we doing this I'm still not hearing how it's going to impact kids.
If I can also follow, because I've heard from a couple families who have talked about the transition and how it's really difficult, and so that really obviously fell in line with what you told us at the last meeting. I guess what I'm trying to get to is, why haven't you been working together better, and how all of a sudden are you going to magically start working together better? And I mean, what exactly is there going to be a new staff position that's going to be kind of overseeing this?
Part of it is, let me answer your question. As far as hiring staff, what happens is they don't currently work for us, so I think we're required, and Dave Cunningham's not here, we're required to post the positions and hire people to fill those positions, because now we can't just move their staff into Lawrence Public Schools that they currently are not.
We would have to do post it, they'll have to apply, and they'll have to clear all of our background checks and qualifications. So yes, they may end up being the most qualified candidates, but if something pops up that doesn't follow our policies, we wouldn't just be able to. So yeah, so it would be a process. Yeah.
Then again, as you look at our programming, again, we go from 3 to 21. Mm-hmm. So our 18 to 21 is a whole different set of rules, and so we run that differently. School age is different. Then we look at parents as teachers, also kind of same framework as Tiny K was, family focused, and we see that fitting under a different system. So Tiny K and parents as teachers are kind of the same. So we really facilitate it differently and have a different supervisor over it. It's not a supervisor who covers everything. We look at the systems differently because there are different expectations, different laws, different rules, and so what happens with Tiny K is not something that we can change. That is the way the system is set up. That is the way the services are provided. That is the way the training and the expectations from the monitoring from the state. So it's the same type of monitoring that we get. There's monitoring for that also to make sure that is being served like it should be. So we don't have the ability to just change it. So what we do is look at how it's supervised as a separate program, just like our early childhood is different than our kindergarten through 5 programs.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Other questions? So I think you answered one of the questions I had, which was what happens to the existing staff. How much discussion has been had with that existing staff about what that transition means?
And that we haven't had any conversation with their staff because it
Right.
hasn't been said.
Okay.
Happen. So we really, I think when we talk about next steps, once the board says we can move forward, then that discussion happens.
Okay. So we would be posting and rehiring all of the positions. Do we anticipate that we would be rehiring the same number of staff?
At this point, I think so, as we look at the number of students, because it's really
The
based
caseload?
on the caseload, the number of students, and services.
Okay. And then as far as administrative work, we think we can absorb the administrative work with existing staff?
Yes.
Okay. And so then all of that one of the benefits that was mentioned earlier from Tiny K's perspective is kind of the employee, just the HR side of it, things that we provide. Are there benefits that we provide that their staff currently doesn't have access to?
The answer is yes.
Yes, I see heads shaking in the audience. Okay, all right. Yes, Kelly.
So the numbers that you showed us in terms of the number of kids served, are those unduplicated children, or are they, do you know what I'm saying? The question, are they you told us the number, and I looked it up on your website. I think it was, you said 316 kids served or something like that. It's essentially the size of a small school. So I'm wondering, if are those unduplicated numbers?
In 2016 and 2017, we served 307 children.
Unduplicated.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, unduplicated.
Over and above that, there are re-referrals that happen.
Okay.
And again, to make it clear, and it was kind of alluded to in that discussion, is that students qualify for birth to 3 services, and they re-qualify, and there's an evaluation before they can qualify for 3 to 21 or school age. And so, and it's a different evaluation. One's based on family need, but the other one's based. But then once you get to 3 to 5, it's based on educational need, and that's where the laws change to focus on what the educational needs of the student are.
Okay.
I just want to say, I better introduce myself. I'm Shelley Doherty, and I am currently the director for Tiny K. I was a school principal for 25 years and a kindergarten teacher for 7 years, so I have experience with special education, early childhood, directing programs. I was on the board the Tiny K board, prior to taking the leadership position because I'm supposed to be retired. But it has been a most fulfilling experience. And I think that sometimes, we're looking to see how families are going to benefit directly. What is that concrete example? And I don't think that you can always show it in concrete terms when you're talking about affecting a staff. What happens, though, is if our staff is more at ease because they feel like there's continuity and consistency in their positions, I think they better serve their kids and families because they're not worrying about insurance. They're not worrying about jobs. They're not worrying about funding. They're not worrying about if a director is going to be leaving. So that is a residual effect that could come with functioning under the umbrella of this district. I also think that there's professional development opportunities that are incredibly profound in terms of best practices for our infants and toddlers. And as they move into that 3 to 5 framework, we know the first 5 years are incredibly important in a child's life and their success later on. Aside from that, I think that there are clerical things that we can avoid mishaps in. I think that understanding transitions from a Part C staff, they'll be better understood, as well as from a B staff. Part B will better understand what we're working toward. And it's not really about us and them anymore. It's really about we and ours, not me and mine. And I would entertain any questions that you have. I really do know how to do affidavits of expenditures now and semi-annual reports and things like that I didn't know I knew how to do. Are much better in the hands of an accountant.
So one of the things that came up when we discussed this at the last board meeting was that this program actually was a part of USD 497 at one point in the past. I guess if anybody knows why it left, I would like to understand that, because I think it would provide some insight as to...
What I will tell you, Kathy and I have talked about this.
Okay.
And I don't know that it was... I was in Lawrence as an intern when it was part of this. When I came back, it was not part of the district, so I wasn't sure it was happening. Kathy's the only person that was here taking sheds and light. And look, you guys...
Put you on the spot, Kathy.
Do you guys know what?
You know, I looked back. Infant toddler grant was under the special education budget of USD 497 in 94, 95, and 95, 96.
Okay.
So it's 20 plus years ago.
Sure.
It looks like they became their own standalone in May 23rd of 2002. So between them leaving us, I think they went to Greenbush and some difference. What I recall...
I think somebody's leaning up against the light switch over there. There you go.
It was a long time.
It's the secret hidden light switch if you lean against the wall.
Okay. I think at the time with the staff that was part of Tiny K, there was some feeling that maybe they thought they could do it differently outside of that umbrella and wanted to try it on their own.
Okay.
And maybe that it didn't turn out quite that way because they kind of went to us, and then Greenbush and some other groups became their own. And just as they've described it, it's hard. And so I think as they've described, they'd like to let go of that and bring it back under an umbrella where maybe it's beneficial and a more holistic look than that standalone piece that it's been kind of bounced around a little bit.
Okay, that's helpful context. Thank you.
And I think if we look at the future, if it's under Lawrence Public Schools, and then the board makes the decision whether someone can just take it and leave. It's
Okay. Other questions?
So the grant writing, someone mentioned that they were doing grant writing. Does that?
It sounds like it's not grant writing in the traditional sense of competitive grant writing.
It's very typical of standard non-competitive grants that we already do with 6B, Title I, Title II, Title III. It's just really staffing and basic. There's no big objectives and lots of stuff that has to go with it.
There's not a lot of narrative that goes into it. It's more of...
There is a narrative that goes into it, but it's not significant at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the basic structure and objectives.
How does the one grant that the board sees every few years is the Carl Perkins application? How does it compare to that kind of grant writing?
I would say that one is a lot more complicated of detail outside of just the budget than this one will. This one wants statistics and some basic different information of things, but it's all stuff we have.
So the staff that's going to come in primarily will be certified staff.
Yes.
So they'll fall into the schedule that teachers are in.
Under schedule, yes.
Okay, and be represented by the union and all of. Okay.
Other questions? Board discussion? I guess from my perspective, the questions that I had, you all have answered, so I appreciate that. Thank you for coming back for another round.
I think the one thing I do want to let Laura talk about is that if the board moves forward, then what's the next step?
Okay. Let's do that. Let's do that, please.
Sure. And so going back to, I'm citing the presentation that we began on the 8th at the board meeting. So the next steps are up on the screens. If the board does vote to approve this, there are quite a few. There's a lengthy transition the process needs to start. Part of it is for hiring and making sure that the staff and we're doing what we need to do, but also we've got there's a local interagency council that needs to vote to approve this also. So your approval tonight would be helping to move forward the process. The local ICC would vote. They would have the opportunity to approve this. There would also be an opportunity for public forum if anybody else should want to come and be the lead fiscal agent, or if anyone has concerns, there would be an opportunity to share that information as well. And then it would be the state that is making the determination if this actually does move forward. And then we would be working on a transition with Tiny K, current Tiny K staff, our staff. What does that transition look like? And there are multiple steps in that, making sure that we're handing over families and we're being very tactful, very appreciative of the relationships that are already built with confidentiality, records, and it really does get into the weeds with that transition plan. That's really kind of a very nutshell version of the transition plan. I'm happy to share. It's about a 6-page process. Happy to share all of that with you if you're interested in that.
I do think it would be important if the board votes to move forward this process that we identify a checkpoint or two throughout that where we get an update on how things are going.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can you just talk a little bit structurally? Do you anticipate that the person providing the administration of the program, that the model will be exactly the same? Like you would have the director come on. There's not what new responsibilities would are there existing staff that would have to take on new responsibilities for Tiny K administration? Is that you? Would you, Kevin?
Well, I think it's different layers, and I think that's part of the discussion is that I handle the communication with the state and making sure grants are and making sure the CAT aid and all those things are in place. And then we look at our early childhood coordinators and see how we work those and how Tiny K works with those programs. So, for example, like it does seem to fit more with parents as teachers because it's the same type of program and family focus. And so what we do is look at how that program is supervised and try to make sure more than likely a coordinator over those two programs together because it's different than our preschool programming and our 3 to 21 program.
Is that a new position or just a changing of a position that you already have?
It's kind of changing the position that we have. Kind of restructuring what we already have.
Okay.
Right. Additional thoughts, comments, questions? I'll just share. I think that the administrative advantages make a lot of sense to me, and it does resonate that by improving that part of the function of the program and the organization, that it would have a maybe not measurable in terms of outcomes or numbers, but it would have a measurable impact on those interactions that families have with the program. So I think at this point I'm comfortable moving forward with doing this, but that's my opinion. So if other board members want to share before we have a motion. Kelly, you looked like you wanted
the most question.
And that's fine. You looked like you wanted to say something to us. So I just wanted to recognize you.
I have more I come to the table with more apprehension because I've seen these kinds of transitions for 501c3s over 25 years of my career, and sometimes they work, and frankly, sometimes they don't. You always lose some things, you gain some things, and so I am being very. I think my questions are coming off as critical, but in fact they're just thoughtful because I am worried about the risks that you may incur by losing your independence, and that piece is and also thinking about what risks the district might incur by taking on the staff. To be honest, so there are layers of this that are playing around in my head, and it's ultimately I agree that you would think that changes of administration would have a positive impact on kids. I would argue that all those things are measurable, but that's a different conversation. Yeah, I need a minute to sit with that, but
I will
support else.
We're not under the illusion that it's going to be easy in that trend.
No,
I do perceive that 5 years down the road, I can see it being a very smooth process. But I know that there's going to be a lot of bumps along the road within the next couple of years. I kind of expect it. We prepare for it, and we will do what we can to make sure we address those. And again, some of the advocacy things are kind of, there still is due process, all the things that we have in special education for parents to make sure that all those things are available also at birth to 3. So it's not like we're taking over now, you have to do whatever. There is a process in place for parents and questions, or our board if there's other questions. Parents have questions, concerns.
Okay, so I'm not trying to beat a dead dog, but I'm because we haven't done this before, and I know with things like this there are criteria in place for staff and ratios, right? So can we potentially down the road see ourselves in a scenario where we have X number of teaching staff for this particular program that can't maybe be harmed by budget cuts, for example? They would be sort of held harmless, and then we would have that sort of political situation in our district.
There's always a maintenance of effort type of thing, but as far as staff, it's really based on services for students. And so as long as we're providing the services for students, for children.
So there aren't requirements within the grant for this particular type of activity?
So for example, when we talk about SLPs, there is a recommended caseload for SLPs, and we kind of stick to that just like we do for our school age and for our teachers. So there are recommended caseloads to make sure students are receiving the services.
Is there a range in that recommended caseload?
Typically, there's a range, and it goes back to looking at student needs, looking out at what their services are, and being able to have the data to project out to make sure that we have the staff to fill that need.
Because there's also potential that if, for some reason, the number of student needs go down, you can reduce staff because you don't still have the same. So it's not about the staffing; it's about the student need. Because there's always that chance that all of a sudden there's an uptake in students or children that need services, and we have to add a staff because.
Right. But it could potentially tie the board's hands to some degree if you have to find $1 million and you're cutting teachers to raise classroom size and you can't really.
Typically, it's difficult with special ed also because we also get reimbursement from the state for our certified staff of about 20.
So these are sort of recommendations that you're used to kind of going through in that process. Okay.
All right. If you're ready for that motion, you look like you're ready to make the motion. So go.
Well, I was ready a while ago, and I think these are good questions, but the administration did recommend that we do this. So I move the Board of Education approve the request to change the local lead fiscal agency for Tiny K early intervention services to USD 497, beginning with the 2018-2019 school year.
Second.
All right. Janice?
Okay. Gordon Ross?
Yes.
Ingram?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Kimball?
Yes.
Eason?
Yes.
Fincher?
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you all for your time this evening and for thoroughly answering all the questions that we threw at you. Appreciate it.
I hope you come back with really exciting outcomes from this. I hope that in 5 years you've done something really innovative, and this has been a really great partnership for the kids that you serve, and thank you for the work you do in the community.
All right. It was brought to my attention that unfortunately we did not recognize a retirement during our consent agenda discussion because we didn't give Jessica the information that she needed. So I'm going to do that now. Would like to recognize Nancy DeGarmo on her retirement and give her our sincere thanks and appreciation for her 14 years of service and devotion to our community and our schools. Okay. All right, so our next item, Kevin, you're up again. Special Education 18 to 21-year-old programming and East Heights renovation with Kevin Harrell, Executive Director of Student Support Services and Special Education, Lori Stitham, our Assistant Director of Special Education, and Donna Patton-Bryant, our Special Education Facilitator.
So good evening again. Kevin Harrell, Executive Director of Student Services, Special Education. When we just spoke about birth to 3, we also provide special education services for students who qualify from 3 to 21. And so today we want to talk about what transition services look like and what our 18 to 21 transition program looks like and what the requirements are.
Hello, I'm Lori Stitham, Assistant Director of Special Education. I work primarily with middle schools, high schools, and then of course our 18 to 21 transition services. Helping me present this evening is Donna Patton-Bryant, one of our special education facilitators. So just thank you for the opportunity to report on one of the very important areas of special education. We're going to just walk through a little bit of background with some requirements and some of our responsibilities related to 18 to 21 services. And then we'll also talk a little bit about, no, I can just do it that way.
Okay.
A little bit about purpose and the why, and we'll talk about that East Heights piece and any questions that you might have regarding that. Just a little background.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. I can see it here.
Our tech.
Yeah. Thanks for the tech support. So before IDEA and the reauthorization, amendment in 1990 and reauthorization in 1997, and the addition of transition plans and transition services for students 18 to 21, post-school outcomes were poor. And these discouraging outcomes were kind of the driving force behind the need for those transition services 18 to 21 and providing that transition to adulthood to help students have the skills to meet their post-secondary goals in the areas of education and employment and independent living skills when they leave us and exit school services. Just a few requirements. So thinking about the federal requirements according to IDEA, so we as Lawrence Public Schools are required to consider, and we think it's important to consider, a need for transition services for students beginning the school year in which they turn 16. That would include a transition plan along with the consideration for a coordinated set of transition activities. And we are required to continue to reevaluate the need for those services through the school year or through June 30th of the school year in which the student turns 21. In Kansas, we have an additional layer of requirements, which we are looking at those students who are turning 14 in any given in an IEP year. We must include a transition plan within their IEP. So that would include an age-appropriate transition assessment, an anticipated course of study for their high school years, and then along with measurable and reasonable post-secondary goals in those 3 areas that I mentioned: education and training, employment, and independent living. So on the screen, it kind of gives you the official definition of transition services according to IDEA, but basically just looking at a breakdown of how we as a school team work with the student themselves, the young adult, as well as the family, to make sure that we are all assisting to ensure a focus of kind of designated services that we are providing to make sure that the needs are met and the student has appropriate skill development so that they are able to exit school services and be as independent as possible. And we all want to be on the same page and align our goals so that we're working toward the same goal, and to put the appropriate supports in place to achieve that goal. So our report tonight is really focusing on 18 to 21 services, but it's important to understand too that that starts before the student is 18. We are looking at those needs all throughout, but specifically in middle school and high school, just to kind of give you a snapshot of what those some of those things would be that we'd be looking at as far as activities and services. At the middle school level, we're really just looking to broaden their views and help them explore and figure out what is it that interests me, what are my options, what do I need to do to get there. And then at high school, we're looking a little more in-depth and helping them to explore. They're still exploring, but we're adding things like work experience opportunities and career development classes, and having more of a coordinated set of transition activities that may include transportation or and quite a bit of community-based instruction, depending on the needs of the student. So as we think about preparing for those 18 to 21 services, Donna's going to talk a little bit about some of our programming and what that looks like, and then we'll come back around to the East Heights facility piece.
Hi. We're starting with the students at 14, but then when students get their credits so they can graduate, whether they've done it with or without an alternative graduation plan, the majority of our students who have IEPs as their peers leave public school services, they pick up their diploma, they have a graduation party, and they go out into the workforce, or they go to school, or to go to training, or they go to college, and they do that either by themselves and with family support, or sometimes they do access community agencies, such as vocational rehabilitation, which can help with training or help finding jobs. But the majority of our students, they can't really, they just want to leave. I don't know why, because they're really fun to be around, but that's what the majority do. There are a small percentage of students, though, that their needs are really continue to be so intense when we're talking about trying to prepare as far as taking care of yourself, as far as being able to be independent and make your own decisions and getting a job, that those pre-skills that you need still require direct special education instruction. And those are the students we're talking about. I don't just need guidance or support, I need direct instruction. So we have, when we look at those services, which we call 18 to 21, we have 3-4 locations where we have students that are operating out of those locations as kind of their home base. All of the transition programs are going to work on providing some skill instruction, some practice, a place to apply what those skills may be, opportunities to get out in the community. So those are occurring across all of them, but it makes a difference as to the skill level you're entering those programs with and what you need to work on, or the intensity of it and the focus will determine with the IEP team where you're going to work out of your home base. We have a very small amount of students, we have 3 this year, who are still getting their 18 to 21 services at their home high school or their neighborhood high school. That's usually done for students who have really pretty intense needs of support that require a range of structure around them. And that might be because of behavioral supports, struggles with transition, some significant medical health issues, that you need those things around. And so those few students stay at the high schools, which is very different. When I came and everybody stayed at the high school for about 7 years. So this is definitely a great improvement. And the students at the high schools, they may stay there through till they're 21, that June 30th, or they may stay there for a while and then try or work to transition into one of the other programs. Oops, just skipped right through. So the second location is what's called our Community Transition Program, or CTRAN for short. The majority of the students who are getting those 18 to 21 special education services go through the C-TRAN program. They may come for a year or 2 years or 3 years. They might come through our program and then go into another program we have called Project Search. Some students they don't need it for all that length of time. And so we really try and focus at the Community Transition Program to meet those students and those families where they are. Okay, and from that, we look at where is it we're hoping you're going to be. And you may have dreams that are way out there, but we kind of focus on what are you going to do after you leave public school services, because it's kind of like retirement, Janice. You know, once you don't have that schedule every day where the bells are going off, you know, and everybody's telling you where to go, a lot of people, they don't know what to do with their lives. And we've provided a whole bunch of structure and support. So the beginning of our whole piece is, what do I want to do in my life when I no longer have the schools to support me? And our outcome, hopefully, is that when they do leave us, regardless of when it is, they have a plan. They have a plan for that whole next year of how I'm going to keep working toward my post-secondary goals. I have a schedule, a daily schedule I'm going to go by. I have my cookbook that we've created of things I've practiced at C-TRAN, and then I'm going to keep with me forever. So that's what we're doing, and we do it with direct instruction. We do that by trying to make things as real as we can for what you're trying to accomplish. I'm not there yet.
I'm sorry. Okay.
All right, so we have the area, a lot of us think of it for the vocational skills. So we have some, and we have a range, okay? So vocationally, I have some students, we have some students who are just working to maybe increase their time on task from 15 minutes to 20, and actually we have a couple that made it to an hour this year. We're pretty excited about that. How to go out in the community safely and do public transportation, how to take care of themselves better. So that's part of the community and the independent living. We have other students who can do a lot of those things, and they're out in one of our, I think we have 30 business sites in our community this semester between the high school and C-TRAN, where we will have students working from maybe 30 minutes to 3 hours a day in those partnerships, learning the hard skills, the actual, how do I organize, or how do I bust the tables, or, do landscaping, or how do I get things ready at Pizza Hut, to how do I navigate the social world of work, which is really very different than the teenage, world of high school. It requires a whole new set of skills. So we have that wide range when we're talking about employment or taking care of myself, and how do I handle relationships, or what do I want to do for further education. Some want to just keep getting better at taking care of themselves. We have others that want to go to junior college, or to go to college. So we have a wide range of those things that we're working on as we go through the day. Some of it's on our campus, some of it's out on in the community. You saw the paper, the Journal World. We were out there this Christmas singing in front of Starbucks. It's really fun. People come by and buy coffee and hot chocolate for us. Anyway, so we have a lot of fun with that. The C-TRAN location that we are currently at is at Holcomb. And you wanted to start this one?
Well, I think just this would be, before we move on to the Project Search as one of the pathways, just to talk a little bit about where C-TRAN is currently located, and then kind of our excited anticipation about moving to a new location. So right now, Community Transition Program is at 2600 West 25th Street, which is just north of the Holcomb Park Recreation Center and Sports Complex. Our current building houses close to 30 students and young adults, along with about 17 staff members, including job coaches and paraeducators, along with certified staff, and the culinary kitchen classroom for the district. And in an attempt to provide a little bit of relief and related to space out there, because I don't know if for those of you that have been out there, it's a pretty tight space out there. And so as a bit of a stopgap measure, we attempted to rent an apartment nearby to allow for that real world opportunity for independent living and daily living skills for young adults. And we did that for a year. Unfortunately, that situation with some lack of pest control and leaving the apartment in some disrepair, we wanted to make sure young adults were safe, so we moved everyone back to our C-Tran building, which made an already crowded situation even more crowded. So we're looking at the potential for a new space and how we're going to fill that and use it. This is a very rough, maybe if I can get the, there we go. So obviously this is just a very kind of rough sketch of the floor plan. And I think there are probably some questions about how do you take, a former elementary school building and make it appropriate for students 18 to 21 with transition needs. And some of those spaces actually, surprisingly, would be a fairly organic transition in some of the needs that are related to the vocational spaces and some of the independent living needs and the space to allow for that real world application to be able to modify one of the larger classrooms in that space to become a studio apartment, to be able to apply those skills, as well as making the environments like the kitchen and bathroom spaces ADA accessible, which is not something that is currently in place. We've made it as accessible as we can within the environment that we're in, but definitely have some work to do, and that's all part of the proposed plan that Tony had shared previously. And Donna's going to walk through the floor plan a little bit just to talk about how we might utilize some of those spaces in more detail. I know there were some questions about that.
We are really excited because we're very cozy right now. It's kind of like living and working in a studio apartment with 9 of your closest friends and their moms. Right? So that's kind of what it's like right now. We have great staff and students that have done amazing things, work with it, and we schedule. But it is hard for many of our students to understand, how can it be I'm working for something after school when it looks kind of like school and I'm doing everything in the same place. So in the same room, you might have somebody who's working on folding and somebody else who's working on their budgeting, another person who's working on social skills, while somebody else is trying to cook and another person is working on their fitness as they follow the YouTube video. So what we are intending to do with this space is to create spaces that are more realistic. Even if we are creating something that's not quite the real thing, it will be a lot more like it and allow for more practice and understanding that when you're in your classroom, you have that kind of environment that's as you're used to. But then it's time to go to work. So we're going to go to one of the work or vocational spaces. And then it's time for a break. And then you're going to do that. And we're not just going to stay in there all the time. This environment is for us to pre-teach, to practice, to make mistakes in, so that then we can go and apply it as we go out into the community. So we have, I can't really point catch, can I? But so there are 3, down below. So there's 3, conceptually, there's 3 group classrooms where we could have large group instruction for different things. And then there's 2 rooms that are smaller because some students are still working on being a part of a group, okay? Or they may need to have it broken down more in a smaller situation. Then the other rooms are all really kind of a multi or dual purpose. And I'll just give you a few examples. The district clothing closet that we have that has been, it's been in the district since before I came, which is a while ago, okay? And it's moved from place to place, but it's there already. And it can be used both for independent living skills, because you can go in and you can match different clothes, and you can learn about folding clothes and hanging clothes and what size do I wear, because a lot of our students don't know for sure. And what do you wear for the winter versus what do you wear for the summer? So you have that whole piece. along with the vocational piece of practicing working in retail, clothing stores, and providing customer service as our district families come in and they need some help looking for things. So you're going to learn both, taking care of my things and also working on running a store and inventory and customer service. So that's one example. Another is the kitchen area. There's an elementary kitchen there, and it's going to be redone so that I believe we have four like kitchenettes, two of which will be wheelchair accessible completely. And we can do the same thing. We can work on how do you store your food, taking care of cleaning, what do I like to make, can I use the microwave? So you were creating, because a lot of our students will at least once a week, they make their own meal in some way. Even if it's just my turn to push the toaster button down, or whether we have an expert Oreo cake man out there right now. But it's also where we can work on food service, if what I want to do is get into food service. So you see how everything can be dual purpose. Our dining area will be where we'll eat together, right? But it'll also be where you can learn to set the table and fill salt and pepper shakers and bus tables. And that whole process goes on, looking at the career clusters and the areas for employment that are most often used and found by individuals with disabilities. We have that. We have a warehouse area for our supplies. And then there's going to be a fitness area and a place to take a break, so that you can go take a break somewhere else. And then our studio apartment will again also be a place where students practice what if you've got a roommate and you've got this kind of a budget, and how are you going to handle that, and taking care of it over a certain amount of time, as well as housekeeping. So, and then outside, we've already started on the flower beds. So that's kind of how we are hoping to utilize this, is to break it down and be able to have some more real world practice before you go out in the community. Any questions about that? Oh, I guess I should, huh? How do we do that? Okay. Okay. The last, it's actually two locations, is Project Search. I don't know if you've heard of Project Search before. It started 6 years ago. We started it 6 years ago. We bought into it, and after a lot of research, joined what was a national program, what is currently an international program. It is started in Cincinnati, Ohio. Its focus is to help young adults with disabilities to become eligible for competitive employment. So the students that go into Project Search they typically have those independent living skills, taking care of themselves. They have a little stronger sense of self and what they're going to want to do, but they're working on then competitive employment. And we do this in partnership with the University of Kansas, where we have one location, and Lawrence Memorial Hospital. We also work with vocational rehabilitation and JobLink as partners to help us as we keep moving these students forward. They have a curriculum that is used internationally. It explores things like team building and interviewing for a job, and practicing how you advocate for yourself. How much do you disclose when you go into a job, and how much don't you? But there's quite an extensive curriculum. The interns have the opportunity to work at 3 different sites throughout the school year. It follows the school year. It is their last year of special education services, and we work on finding things that are of interest, but also learning different skills. Sometimes, I don't know how many of you had the same major through college all the way through, but students' goals change, and their ideas of what they can do, and we're trying to help them explore that in a real world setting. So I've only been back in transition for this is my 3rd year, or 4th year, I think. The overall impact is to hopefully address IDEA concerns around more people with disabilities having competitive employment and working, and having more of a say in what their life is like, and taking care of themselves and being more independent. And so we are certainly working on those things. I think the hard part, it's interesting when you talked earlier, the hard part it shows to measure is what I see every year working out there, which is young people who all of a sudden kind of go, wait a minute, I'm my own person. And I'm a person that's separate than what my disability is. Okay, and I can make decisions, and they may not be the right ones, but I can have confidence in them. And those things are a little harder to put into numbers, but they occur all the time. It's just students can just bloom amazingly from one year to the next. So that's the impact that we're having on our students.
So that concludes our report. Would want to give an opportunity for any questions that you all might have.
I think the one question I have is transportation access for the is between your current site at C-Tran versus East Heights, and is that going to be? Will moving the program out there make it easier for you to access the city bus system? And
yes, it will. Right now, we do have access to the city bus. We can either go like across the fields and through the parks, the baseball parks, and catch buses in front of Holcomb.
Okay.
Or we can go down to 25th Street. But at East Heights, there are 2 bus stops within like 500 feet.
Okay.
Okay.
And
what we have a lot of our students they ride our school buses, but we have vans that we take them around. But for instance, this year, we have a whole bunch of students who are all riding the city buses.
Okay. What about getting to the program every day in terms of access for your students and families? Will the move be an improvement in terms of accessibility in that way?
So typically, students who, if they are not riding the city bus, confidently, then we are providing transportation. So that's not as much of an issue.
Much of an issue. Okay.
As well as a consideration was our young adults and staff supported use Holcomb Rec Center quite a bit, but the advantage of the East Lawrence Rec Center is right there as well, so we're not losing.
And East Heights also has the gymnasium space.
Correct.
And that's going to continue to be the gymnasium, right? We're not...
Part of it will.
Okay.
Not all of it, but part of it. We want to have opportunities for them to try and learn new things and also learn how to use equipment appropriately. But, our focus is let's get you out in the community and find out this is a safe place and you can handle it.
Okay. Board members have other questions? All right. We have a motion with this one. I'll go ahead and I'll make the motion. I have it pulled up. I move the Board of Education approve a contract with Benchmark Construction for the renovations at East Heights Elementary to accommodate the community transition program in the amount of $402,945 plus a 5% contingency in the amount of $20,150 for unforeseen costs to be paid from the capital outlay fund.
Second.
Okay. Ingram.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Kimball.
Yes.
Beeson.
Yes.
Fincher.
Yes.
Gordon Ross.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Our last report this evening is an examination of high school course offerings, and we have a number of staff members here with us this evening. Jerry Kimball, Assistant Superintendent of Leading Learning and Technology. Rick Henry, our Director of High School Support. Myron Graber, Principal at Free State High School. Matthew Brungart, Principal at Lawrence High School. And Patrick Kelly, our Principal at the Lawrence College and Career Center.
So good evening. I'm Rick Henry, Director of High School Support, and thank you, Shannon, for introducing the other people who are here tonight as well. Start by saying there's no vote tonight on what we're talking about. This is for information and discussion. We are bumping up against our enrollment period, though, so February 12th, we would appreciate being able to know how to move forward from here. I'll start with the courses that we're proposing. These courses, with the exception of the AP Human Geography course, would be taught at the College and Career Center, trying to include more options for more personalization an integration of some core areas into CTE programs. If you look at the high school course proposals that were included with your packet, there are the courses that are proposed for the College and Career Center are the English 12, Integrated Math, Principles of Technology, which is actually a science course, and the Cybersecurity. All of those they meet qualified admissions requirements. So we were trying to be intentional about that. I don't know. I would open it up for questions.
So I have a question. Obviously, Melissa couldn't join us this evening, but she had a question that she wanted me to ask about the integrated math course. And this is her question. The description indicates it will replace traditional courses such as the sequence algebra and geometry course. Can you clarify? I ask because sometimes students leave middle school having already completed geometry and some algebra, and how is this addressed in the new course? And is that integrated math course an addition, or is it replacing other courses?
I would say what we were trying to do, and help me out if I need some help, I probably do. We were trying to select courses that would provide as much flexibility as possible. For example, we wanted to be able to emphasize the connections among math, not just different math topics, but also mathematics and other disciplines. So the personalization aspect of it would be if I'm in an integrated, if I'm in my integrated math class and I'm actually in a culinary pathway, then maybe I'm examining how math works in that pathway. Or if I'm in the automotive pathway or engineering or any of the other pathways, we're trying to build in flexibility so that we can meet those.
So is this? So I know we've talked some in kind of discussion that we've had, like at board lunches and whatnot, about ways to build flexibility into our course offerings that allow students, for example, to perhaps spend an entire day out at the College and Career Center. And is this integrated math course one of the courses we need to have in order to allow students to do that?
That would be a secondary motivation for adding some courses to allow students the flexibility of spending more of their day at the College and Career Center.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay.
Is there anything else you would like to add about the integrated math? Okay.
So just to clarify, the setting aside the civics course, the other courses would all be new courses.
They would be, and so that's why we're bringing them before.
And are we taking things off of the schedule to offer these, or we're just adding them into the schedule as additional offerings? Okay. 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 Other board members have questions? Jessica?
Well, I mean, so can we talk about the civics?
Yes. Yes.
I'm not. I was wanting to talk about the new course proposals.
Kind of separately. Okay. We'll go with your.
Okay.
The AP Human Geography would be a course that would be taught at the high schools, at Lawrence High and at Free State. We've had, we've been looking for an advanced course to offer to students at the 9th grade level to give them that introductory AP experience. We've also had, I know Myron has told me that he's had some parents and students requesting an advanced social studies course at the 9th grade level. So this is an attempt or our efforts to provide that course.
How does it work in the sequence of civics courses? Is it repetitive in the next level, or is it in a
human geography course or the civics course?
Human geography, it's been a long time since I went to college or took an AP class, but is there human geography sounds like a weird description to me. I mean, in the catalog, is there, or just everybody else knows what it is, but you know.
No, that's a very fair question. The course description here, it focuses on, it introduces students to the systematic study of patterns and processes that have shaped the ways in which humans understand, use, and alter the Earth's surface, as a basic description of it. Students use spatial concepts and landscape analysis to examine human social organization and its environmental consequences, and also learn about the methods and tools geographers use in their science and practice.
Okay.
So it's not like civics. It's.
So we're not talking about nature geography. We're talking about human-influenced cultural geography. Okay.
So because we've gotten some feedback from the high schools, particularly teachers, about kind of the civics, U.S. government, human geography sort of trifecta or whatever.
Are you ready to move on to the civics?
Yes.
No? Okay. Sure. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jessica.
No, I think we need to better understand kind of where you and the other principals are thinking about going with this, kind of what your general sort of thoughts on are. Because, you know, obviously we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community that are really just pretty irritated we took out civics as a requirement. I even personally am kind of mad at myself for that vote, given the world we live in. However, if there's redundancy in the coursework and these kids are going to go through it one way or another because they can't avoid it, I mean, I think that's important to know. And then what can we supplement it with that could enhance those? I mean, I'm all for all that, but I do think let's discuss it and get a better understanding as a board so we can go out and talk to people that ask us questions.
Sure. First of all, we still offer civics at the ninth grade.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, and some people haven't understood that, so I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. We've spoken. We've received communication from department chairs at both high schools, and both have said that there is a great deal of overlap between U.S. government and the civics course.
And U.S. government is the senior level,
it's the senior
and
level.
Civics is the ninth grade level class that we used to require that 0.5 credit. I just want to make sure that our new board members kind of understand where we've been with this. And last year we had this discussion, and we actually removed it as a graduation requirement. And at the time, the discussion was that would allow our kids at the ninth grade level to have a little more flexibility in their schedule and maybe take some additional, have some additional electives that they could build into their schedule. But board members at the time did ask this question with kind of this same thing that Jessica just expressed in mind, which is, geez, if there's any point in time in our recent history that seems like people having a good understanding of civics is important, it would be right now. And at the time there was this discussion about that there's overlap and it's repetitive. So here we are, and we're gonna talk about it a little more. So,
in current enrollment as is, could a student technically go through and not take either course? Is that a possibility?
No.
They'd have to take one or the other. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Governments are required by the state.
And those are your only options to fill that requirement. Okay.
Well, government is required for everyone, regardless if we offer civics or not.
Okay.
It looks like to me, and I was about 6 o'clock, I learned that maybe we would want to have a comparison of the two courses to check on the overlap. So I haven't had time to really dig into it, but it looks like to me that all of the ninth grade civics would be contained in the U.S. government course. The opposite isn't true, because the government course would go in. The U.S. government course would go into much more detail, and is a 12th grade course as opposed to a ninth grade course.
and it's a 1 credit, it's a year-long course as opposed to.
It's a semester.
It's a semester. Okay.
Civics is a semester?
Yes,
Okay.
both are a semester.
Okay.
So what are the department chairs wanting to add? A human geography course that's not AP?
They are. We've heard from one member.
They don't want civics to be required because they don't want the freshmen to have to take it, and then if they go take U.S. government again, there's too much overlap. That's what I got from the one. They don't want civics to go back to being required again.
Right, I got that too, but there did seem to be some discussion of the opportunity it would create to have this new class if we didn't make civics a requirement again. Am I missing something?
No, you're not. There would be, I believe, a desire on the part of the social studies departments, or at least the department chairs. We haven't polled all the department members, to include an on-level semester-long course in human geography. The AP Human Geography is a year-long course, but they would propose, I believe, that we add a semester-long human geography course that's not at the AP level.
And they would like, how are we reconciling the civics and U.S. government class? They're wanting to not offer civics so that there's not repeat. If you have
Not make it required, like it is now.
So
would human geography be required then?
Well, I think nothing. It wouldn't have to be required.
So it wouldn't really get at the kids who are going to enroll in civics and then enroll in government anyway.
I'm sorry, I don't follow what you mean.
So if the notion of putting together a human geography course that would provide kind of a different skill set and development of cultural understanding to kind of parallel with government to get that sort of, how does government work and how to be a good citizen kind of thing that we think civics teaches, right? Then how do we get students to not take civics in government?
So
if all three are open and none of them are, government's required, but the other two aren't required, so any student, and if we don't do a good sort of educate the public and parents that I've talked to time and time again that, human geography and government is going to cover really everything you're after, then we're going to have a lot of students that are going to be taking civics in 9th grade because their parents are going to make them.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this needs to be part of a broader conversation about reviewing the whole sequence of the social studies curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
I see heads shaking out in the audience.
we don't know enough.
Yeah, some time.
Very helpful.
So what is it? What is it that you guys really need to know from us? Is it an answer? Two separate answers. One, are we okay with the new courses that you're talking about offering? And I guess I would ask that question to the board. Does anybody have concern about that, apart from civics, that set of new courses that we're talking about adding?
Which is on this list.
Which is on the list, which is on the board enclosure. So the cybersecurity, the AP Human Geography.
Look good.
Thumbs up, everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. All right, so I think everybody has a comfort level with moving forward with that. Because people are getting questions about the civics and how that, but it sounds like maybe everybody's not entirely on board with where we think we want to go with that. We need some more time.
We do need some more time. And I would also suggest if we're looking at adding another semester to graduation requirements, maybe we need to step back and look at other kinds of courses. Maybe there's a course that we could create that would provide that civic engagement piece, but we would also be able to do other things in that course as well. With KISA requirements, we're looking at plans of study. We know that social is a big piece of where we are right now, and also a big piece of KISA, socio-emotional, that aspect. There are other things that, given more time, that we could probably determine would be really important and helpful to have in a course like that. So I don't want to just fixate on it has to be a social studies credit. It could be a different kind of course where we pull in some social studies, civic engagement kinds of things, which seems to be important to our community. Maybe community service kinds of things. There are different ways we can go with it. We just need some time.
Kelly, you had a question?
I understand the direction. I think that would be, all those things would be great. But if the civics class replicates the government class and the government class is required, the question would be, isn't that an ideal place to make a change? So that would be what I would want. I understand the sequence as it comes, but if I'm missing something, if it's duplicative and government is required, I don't understand why we offer it. Do you understand this? Can you answer that for me as an educator, why we do that?
Well, I think that's why last year it was probably removed as a graduation requirement.
But we still offer it as a course, so they still can use a semester to do it.
The reason we offer civics is because when we had junior high schools, it was the 9th grade requirement in the junior high school. When we went and we brought the 9th graders up to the high schools, we rolled their curriculum up. And we did that so quickly, we realized that there was going to be a problem with having civics and government, but we were going to deal with that problem on down the line. Well, here we are on down the line, and we've never really effectively dealt with that problem. And so everybody knew that there was an overlap in between civics and government, but when you're dealing with a high school issue and a middle school issue, that's no different than having overlap in American history in middle school, junior high school, and high school. Well, it would be kind of similar to if we had taught American history in the 9th grade year, and we brought that up with the 9th graders, and so we had kids taking American history in 9th grade and then taking some version of American history again in the 11th grade year. And that's just a problem we've never cleaned up since we did that transition, however many years ago that was. So that's kind of how we got from where we were to where we are today. So I think
And I just, I know we're talking about civics and social studies specifically right now, but honestly, this is just a part of a curriculum review process that hasn't happened in a while to see where there's overlap and to actually remove courses where there's redundancy. Because since I've been paying attention, I can't think of a time when we took a course out of the course offerings, but the last couple of years has added courses. So we probably do need to do a thorough map out a plan for a thorough curriculum review process, but this may just be the beginning, like looking at civics and whatever in the senior level class and maybe saying, okay, civics is removed so that students won't end up taking that in the other and articulate to parents and community members, this is where you are getting those things that were covered in civics.
I just want to, and I don't want to say that I think redundancy is always bad. Sometimes I think that idea that you give certain information to start and then you build on it is important too, but
I don't think that's what's happening.
That's not what's happening.
If we left it, making sure that it's scaffolded in that way, that you're not getting almost the exact same information.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Reasonable timeline for this sort of overarching high school curriculum review. Because when we think about it, it's like the longer we put it off, the more students kind of miss the opportunity, right? So what's reasonable?
Well, I might defer to Jerry on this, but that is the process that we are beginning right now. We're actually working on putting a process in place for that so that we can get started on that maybe as early as this summer, starting.
Honestly, in a previous district, when I lived through this, it took about a year for each content area. So you would have to prioritize what is what and look at and see where the most need is. But it takes about a year to really thoroughly look at the scope and sequence. And then you can start, if you start in high school and look at all the offerings and rely on, the knowledge of the teachers who are experts in there, as well as creating a process to look at it and articulate it and flesh it out. It takes about a year.
And would this be an opportunity for us to integrate sort of looking at things through, sort of that culturally relevant rubric and having the Equity Council that wants to look at certain curriculum be kind of part of those particular conversations?
So you can have them, yes, absolutely.
I do have, sorry, go ahead.
Well, that is the exact discussion that we've been having, along with ESDC standards, the technology kinds of things, trying to put it all in and do it right the first time, including all stakeholders, all areas that we feel like we need to include equity
and then
as well.
Creating a cycle so that you're not so once you go through, then you'll come back through, and not that you're changing it every time, but our world evolves and how our course is evolving and looking at those components.
And I'm guessing there was a cycle before, a lot of school districts got really messed up in their curriculum cycles when budget cuts started occurring and things started getting put off. So I'm guessing that might have occurred here. I wasn't here when that happened.
Rick.
Yeah, I have a very specific question. Now that civics is no longer required, and this is really for Myron and Matt, I think, what's the enrollment look like? I mean, I would expect it to be down somewhat, but I'm just kind of curious as to how
I'll let them.
you're not
I think
healthy.
I know the answer, but I'll let them answer.
Oh, well, whoever knows the answer.
I think we're offering about 4 sections a semester, so call it between 80 and 100 kids per semester. So we're teaching, 150 to 200 kids.
And compared to last year when it was required?
That would have been the entire freshman class, so call it
So
400 kids.
Okay.
So we're about the same. We have 4 sections each semester, so you're looking about the same thing.
Okay, thanks.
So nearly half of the freshman class still taking it.
Except it's open.
It's not just ninth grade.
Yeah. But I mean, everybody else has already taken it, so it would have been freshmen this year. But yeah.
Okay.
I have to tell you, I don't think the redundancy in this particular area is a bad thing, given some of the things that are happening.
So I guess my question for board members is, do you have a comfort level being able to communicate back to parents and others that are contacting you about this, that even though we don't have it as a requirement currently, kids are getting the content?
Well, I think even though we don't have a course titled civics,
We're still
the
teaching
ideals that we're hoping that are communicated and with a class of that name is being done within this other class. Is that the correct answer? I mean, that's kind of my perception.
That is the sense that I am getting. I just want, because the conversation that kind of prompted this was, should we bring it back as a requirement? And I think based on what I'm hearing, my personal answer to that right now would be no, but we do need to take real concrete steps toward this broader overview of our curriculum and sequencing at the high school level in this area and others.
Right, and we're looking at all levels, not just high school.
Okay. But I guess what I want to know is, does that give board members a comfort to be able to, the information you need to be able to say to people that ask you questions about this? Okay, we are teaching the content. Here's what's happening. It's okay that we're not requiring it as a graduation requirement, but we're also looking at these other things.
Would it be helpful to have just a summary with some talking points sent to you so that you'll have it in case it comes up not tomorrow, but 3 months down the line? Okay,
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would really like to have some sense of the timeline, like what are the steps that are going to happen, and
to review the whole process.
Like it's going to take a year per,
Yeah, when you look at the number of courses
right
in each content area, it does. Like, so this civics versus the
U.S. government.
Human geography.
Oh.
No, the senior one that has it.
U.S. government.
Seniors, U.S.
I'm sorry, it's I've lost the thing. But that wouldn't take a year.
Yeah.
That they probably could flush out in how long? Like if you looked at that. So that one course wouldn't take a year, but to look at all of social studies in its entirety would take a year.
Is there another subject matter that is more pressing to do first?
I think
ELA.
We think so. We think
It's ELA.
We think English language arts.
Okay.
So if you were going to do them simultaneously, it's a matter of support to do it, like actual individuals in the professional development around, like the time. So you could do 2 concurrently, but you got to allocate resources to do it.
This is probably not something that we're wanting to put off. So
No, we can.
Steps.
Yeah.
Right.
So
We know more. That's what I want to know right now. Is when will you be prepared to tell us more about what the process is going to look like?
So we are actually working on that right now. Tomorrow we get together. We are hoping to have a process, just the process, mapped out by mid-April is what we would like to do. So
Then you'll come back to the board in April and kind of tell us the plan.
and we could show you that process that we will work through and how we will embed all of the things that Rick alluded to in that curriculum review process. But we have slated, everyone we talk to says ELA,
needs to go
English
first.
Language Arts, needs to be first. But having said that, we could take care of, just the one issue in social studies, but
I don't know. I'm speaking for myself. I would be more interested in knowing what staff thinks is the priority and the order that we ought to do things. Because, we all are going to hear things from people, and we all have our own personal priorities. But really, I would want to know what their priorities are without kind of having us say, "Well, we think you ought to do it this way first." So.
Okay.
Yes,
Can
Kelly.
you come to us with the timeline? Is it reasonable that, with the procedure for review of the curriculum, is it reasonable that you would have a timeline for, like, if you had decided as a group that you were going to do ELA first, could you also come to us in April with a timeline of when you anticipated getting going on that? Is that
I think
part of
we
the
can
process?
anticipate it. Keep in mind, we are all new in our positions, have not gone through that process yet. So, it needs to be flexible as well.
Yeah, I appreciate. I truly appreciate that. Probably more than anyway. I'm new in my position. But if we could have a kind of a general timeline, and
Sure.
certainly it's not something that I would, hold you
Right.
to. But if
Right.
something that we could check in on, check if there were points of which.
And there are.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was wondering
We
about
want it
the
to
process.
be pretty structured.
Okay.
Delineated.
Great.
Exactly what we do at each step along the way. So.
Okay. And then I have one other question about this course, and I think this might be because I'm new, but the human geography course, if it was offered not as the AP course but as an additional elective, is that what I'm understanding right now? Is there a reason why if the directors are saying they would like to offer this, is there something that would prohibit us from doing that if we won't be looking at this curriculum for another year or two? Does that make sense?
Why are we putting it off? If we're going to do AP, why not do the other, I think is the question.
Yeah.
Why would we put it off for 2 years potentially?
Well,
Would we continue to just offer civics and not do this alternative if the directors think it would be a better course for now?
well, as far as I know, we'll continue to offer civics as we do now.
Mhm.
The AP Human Geography course is a year-long course, and we have to follow AP's curriculum
Mhm.
strictly. The on-level Human Geography course would be a semester long, so we have the advantage that basically the AP course is already in place for us, dictated by
Right.
AP. The other one is not.
So while they say they want to teach it, it has not been written, is what you're saying?
It hasn't been written. That doesn't mean that it can't be this semester and offered next fall. Along with that would come some expense as well.
Or it could be approved but go into effect the following school year. I don't know how realistic it is to write it and offer it next fall. But I think you could check with the department chairs and the building principals. But you could approve to offer it and then not offer it the 18-19, but 19-20.
So, would it be possible to just let staff have this discussion and then just revisit this?
Yeah,
this-
because
that
I think we
particular
can
question?
loop back around to all of those questions in April once we have a process and
Okay.
then also have a timeline for like 18-19, 19-20 and outline it. And I'm honestly, I know, Jerry said we need to be flexible. Typically, it takes about a year
Okay.
to go through each content area.
And then I guess, Jerry, the only last thing I would ask is when you guys do come back to us in April to give us some understanding of why you selected them in the order that you did. Like, what are the pressing issues and the priorities that you determined? It would be nice to have an understanding of that. Because right now, I don't ever hear anything about ELA from people other than Huck Finn. But I hear about social studies all the time.
All right.
And you only would do one. So the other thing I'm thinking about is that you would do one a year. You would then have this like 7-year. Is that what you're saying, Anna? Has happened? Or you don't do 2 courses in 1 year?
You could if you allocate the resources to do it. So you would need the individuals to facilitate the groups, and then as you're looking at it, you're also looking at resources, and that will have an impact on the budget if you are updating the resources. So, for example, the resources in civics probably need to be updated. Okay. So if you did that or any other course, those are the things you would address as you go to within the cycle. And that's why you would have a cycle, so that you would not get to a place where it's like, ooh, we haven't looked at that in 8 years or whatever.
Or you're looking at them all at the same time and
And
can't
then-
afford to
yeah,
implement.
right.
So I get the sense just from the conversation that we've had so far that the board would be open to a plan that's more aggressive if that's what you come to, if it makes sense and that's what you come to us with, and this makes sense. But at the same time, it might not make sense. So
by April, we can flesh that out and provide an aggressive option and a less aggressive option.
Or
and
staff's first choice, this is the way we think we best ought to do it, but here are other options we considered. This is one of those, I think I have a comfort level that if we have a plan that makes
Talked about
sense.
too, staggering it some, because we want to start that process, see how it's working, see where the bumps are as we go through the process, and not start 2 or more at one time, stagger it out.
So maybe not one a year, but maybe like
And then
Right,
6 months
at
later.
semester,
Yes.
start a second one. We've talked, that's been a discussion
That
we've
would
had
sort
as
of
well.
speed it up a little, but
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
other questions on this topic.
Thank you for
Yes.
answering all these questions you weren't prepared to talk about tonight.
Thank you.
So right now, no reservations, no questions about the 5 courses that we're proposing. The graduation requirement addition on hold for now? Is that what I'm
Yes.
hearing?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then you'll vote on that next.
The proposed 5 new courses?
Right.
We have to actually approve those so they can put them in the court, and it'll be on consent at our next meeting.
Right.
The 5 new courses, yes.
They don't have a problem, can they just vote?
Seems fine to me.
That seems fine. We don't have a motion prepared, but we can make one up as we go. Somebody want to take a stab at that? I'll do it. All right, so I move that we approve the addition of the high school course proposals for the 2018-2019 school year to include the English 12, Integrated Math, Principles of Technology, AP Human Geography, and Cybersecurity courses that are outlined in the attachment to the board enclosure.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We didn't need to call roll for that. Okay, all right.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we conclude our agenda, and we need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Let me log. Super helpful.
Thanks for actually speaking to it.